This is your home for St. Cloud State hockey, keeping you up to date on the NCHC.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Pervix!
Women's WCHA.
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies alongside
The National Hockey League.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it! He scores! Kirill, the thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL, a game winner!
And everything from the state of hockey.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.
Welcome to the Huskies Warming House Podcast Den. And welcome in episode number 100, the Healthy Scratch interview segment. Nick, boy, those words don't sound right coming out of my mouth here. It's been a while since we've had a guest on the show, and been an even longer time since we've had a pair of guests or a guest on the show that wasn't connected to another part of the show. So, but this one I think listeners are going to enjoy very well. Minot, North Dakota native Mike Schmitt coming on the show, current NCHC officiating supervisor, to talk all things refereeing. This was a fun one, Nick. What were your impressions of Mike? Your first time, obviously, meeting him and getting a chance to kind of hear about the NCHC officiating world.
I think fans will find this episode insightful because we break down some of, just obviously, and he's been a referee for over 20 years now, obviously in a supervisory role. So we dive into, what does that mean? What does the supervisor actually do? We actually break down some specific plays from this year that were questionable from both sides of the puck for the Huskies, as well as getting into some referee philosophy, how you manage emotions in a game, and more so maybe from his take. And this is the part that I really like the most, Noah, is if there's anything about reviews, I will just leave it at that.
Yeah, pretty good. Just kind of learning how to kind of walk through a weekend, what it's like to officiate in the NCHC, and the things that those entail. We won't keep you waiting. Episode number 100 with Mike Schmitt.
And welcome in, everyone, to the Huskies Warming House podcast for a very special interview. Joining us now to talk about all things officiating. Yes, everybody's favorite pinstripes apparel. We have NCHC supervisor. Yes, Mike Schmitt. Mike, great to have you with us, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, excited to have you on, Mike, as always. And like you had mentioned, one of 4 NCHC supervisors, actually since the league's inception. So obviously, your way around college hockey, if you will. 15 seasons in the WCHA as an official. I believe 13 as a linesman. Is that right?
I did 2 years as linesman, 13 as referee.
Oh, other way around. Okay,
Other
got
way
it.
around. Yep.
Got it. So 7 Frozen Fours, 11 regionals, 12 Final Fives, and 2 national championships on that resume. So pretty impressive. We'll definitely get into that in a little bit, but let's start with how you're doing today, Mike. I don't know that many fans, wouldn't support an official being injured per se, but Mike, you're on the IR right now with a broken hand. How did it happen?
Yeah, well, like you can see here, playing a little men's league, beer league hockey last week, and an accident where a guy turned into me and into my stick, and long story short, I end up at the doctor on last Thursday, and now I'm meeting with a hand wrist guy tomorrow, or surgeon, and going to have surgery this week sometime. So hopefully it'll be earlier, so I can get down and do. I'm supposed to be in St. Cloud this weekend, so hopefully it'll be either early or after next week, so I can go to St. Cloud.
I hope you can bring some victories for the St. Cloud team, because it's been a rough go for the Cardinal and Black as of late, especially since essentially the Miami series, where I think a little bit overshadowed with some of the flaws in that team, and now they're really starting to come out. But Mike, let's get into officiating, because this is a topic I think everybody likes to dive into. But let's just start with the basics. How did you yourself get into an officiating role?
Well, what happened is I came back to my hometown, Minot, North Dakota. I came back after college in '84. I aged myself there, but then we had these I wouldn't even say it was even minor pro, as these startup teams is like, I know it's Minor Maple Leafs, and they put butts in the stands and they like to fight. And so a couple of guys said, hey, you're young, you just came back, you played high school hockey and some junior college hockey. So do you want to put the stripes on and come out here? And that's what I basically did. I started, they threw me out there into the wolves, man. And it's just basically to break up fights. And so I kind of enjoyed it. I enjoyed what it was. And then I got lucky. I went to some USA hockey camps, and then Dean Blaze, who was at UND at the time, he was my high school coach. He was good friends with Ron Foyt, who is a supervisor officials now, but at the time he ran the officials for the WCHA. So I reached out to, Dean. I said, hey, how does a guy make it to the next level? He put me in contact with Ron Foyt, went to a camp. And so I got my first shot in 88, 89, I think it was, doing lines at UND. And then I went through some USA hockey referees camps, kind of like the players do, development camps, and escalated up and was able to, do what I'm doing in college, and did a lot of, I did about 5 international tournaments with USA hockey. So, basically got lucky. That's how it started, just basically in my backyard mining.
So on the other side of that, Mike, you officiate for 15 seasons. The NCHC kind of comes into play right around 2012, 2013. Yep. When did you kind of know that you didn't necessarily want to be on the ice anymore, but you still wanted to have that role in terms of the NCHC in a supervisory position?
Yeah, so in 2002-3 is when I hung it up, and that was when my boys were starting to play high school. My oldest one was playing high school. My youngest one was getting in competitive hockey. And for me here, as you guys know, the geography up here, the only place I can drive is Grand Forks. So I was flying to Wisconsin, flying everywhere else at Michigan Tech, everything in WCHA. So I was gone every weekend. So I decided to step away from it at that point in time. And then what happened is the new league came up, and actually I got called to interview for the director of officiating job. And it came down between myself and Donnie Adam, another individual, and Donnie Adam's there now. And when I interviewed for the job, that's when my son just got offered to play at Lake State in 2012. So, knew I was going to spend 4 years of chasing, going to, those games. And I interviewed on it. I just told the panel that, hey, if you think I am the guy that you need, I would stay with it. But I'm going to be following my son for 4 years. And I knew that Donnie was going to hire supervisors, and I was going to do the same. So we kind of talked behind the interviews, and whoever got the job of him or I did, we'd hire each other as supervisors. So I knew I was going to jump back into the supervisor capacity one way or another at that point in time. Within this new league, I saw the opportunity there, and I jumped at it.
Yeah, to kind of touch on a little bit, if I may interject, Nick. Actually, I knew Bryce, your son, who played at Lake Superior when I was younger too. Of course, spent 3 years in the Null with Bismarck and had 63 points, 166 games, and then 4 years at Lake Superior, 148 games for him. And I believe he was assistant captain in 2015-16 his last year. Yep. But I knew him from Ask Fitness, actually, Marty Murray, back when he used to train there. And I think it was my junior year of high school. I will never forget it to this day. We were doing some sort of like deadlift type thing, and we got done with that, and we did some arm workout, and he walked over and he grabbed the 110-pound dumbbells and started doing flies, like shoulder flies with 110-pound dumbbells. And I was like, holy shit, like this guy's on another level, man. But I guess to kind of touch on that, I mean, how exciting was it, to have a kid who ended up playing at the Division I level and being around the game that, of course, you knew years prior for so long?
It's really exciting. It was fun, to be, and it came late. He was a late signee. But, he saw that he went to juniors. His dream was to play D1 hockey, and it came late, and he had the offer. And it's kind of funny because Jim Rock, the coach, used to coach one, I don't know if it's the Americans or Top Guns at the time back here in Minot. So had a little connection with them. And not only was it fun with him, and then I have my oldest son who referees in the NCHC. In fact, he'll be doing the St. Cloud Duluth game. As we speak, it's whatever this broadcast, but on Tuesday night. So
no pressure. It comes out tomorrow morning on Tuesday. So
okay, there he goes. So he's, so it's fun to see those individuals. The only thing is, my wife is funny because we're taking Bryce out to Lake State. We drove. I'm out there, of course. Went through Grand Forks, and she goes, nope, couldn't be here, could he? Being distance. Went through Bemidji, no, couldn't be here. Went through Duluth, went through Marquette, and we go the furthest distance down Highway 2. But you know what? He had a great 4 years, and we loved it out there. So, yeah, it was a great experience.
So, Mike, let's dive in a little bit to what the role is of a supervisor for officiating, right? Because I think a lot of fans have an idea of what it might actually entail, but I guess can you sum it up for what the job actually means and what your actual powers are?
Yeah, I'll just give you a rundown of what will happen. Like, let's say if I go to St. Cloud this weekend, I'll fly into Minneapolis. I'm going to hook up with Ryan Hersey, who's coming out of San Diego, one of the referees. We're working with a local referee because referees fly in from different places. We do have some localized. So we'll pick up the linesmen. They're local. We'll head to St. Cloud. My first thing when we get into St. Cloud is I'll meet with both coaches. I'll go into both coaches, say I'm here. They know I'm going to be there. And usually they'll show me video from the weekend before, whatever. They'll show me, hey, maybe when I go see Brett, he'll show me things from the CC that, hey, this center likes to do this. They like to do that. Can you guys be aware of that? We'll just, talk about that. And what happens is I'll go back, talk to the guys, how my meeting with coaches went. Game time, I'll be up on top in the press box making notes, and I will be sitting next to the video review person. I don't operate the review. We have a person operating the review. If we have a review, I'll jump in the headset. I don't have a decision. None of the supervisors have a decision on ice. We just walk guys through it. They'll talk to us like, hey, and I'll ask them, what do you have on the ice? We have no goal because of goaltending interference. Okay, walk me through it. Okay, and then we'll look for the best angles prior to them coming up there. They'll make that decision. They'll kind of ask me, do you concur? I said, yeah, I'll concur with you on that, but that's their decision. After the game, I'll have all my notes. We'll go through a little process of that. Hey, this was right. This wasn't right. How we did there. I'll go back to the hotel that night, write up a report, send in to Donnie Adams. All other officials will get that. Saturday morning, the coaches have a window of 9 to 1 that they can send me video. They can call me. They can bring up complaints. They can bring up whatever they want at that point in time. I might go, meet them at the rink if I'm in the same town, look at video. And then what we do is on Saturday, we do not meet with the coaches on Saturday. This is a new thing we did this year, just because it takes some of the heat off of, going to the locker room and talking to them after Friday night. I do the same thing over, and then I go home on the weekend. And so that's basically, and this sums it up of what we do in that situation. Now with the power of a supervisor, if there is suspensions, what will happen is our director of officiating will send out the clip saying, hey, a team wants a challenger, they wants a suspension. So they'll send it out to every supervisor officials, and I send my response in alone. I don't see the other guys' responses. We send those in to Don Adam and Josh Fenton, our commissioner. Well, they'll make that decision based on all of our 4 recommendations from the supervisor officials, Donnie and Josh. So that'd be the other aspect that we do that's it, probably in a nutshell there.
Real quick, Noah, just to follow up, Mike. Now, when you talk about a suspension, does that play have to have been penalized, or could it be a non-penalized play if a video was sent in to you?
Yeah, both, because we just had one in the North Dakota game a couple of weeks ago where there's no call on the ice, but the player was suspended after the fact. So it could be both situations.
Kind of a follow-up on that too, Mike, before we get into some specific scenarios that have happened over the course of this season. You mentioned when you're talking to the coaches from the previous weekend and they bring up some points about particular teams or tendencies. How often is it that those points influence the way that the officials will run the game? And how often is it where, for lack of a better term, it's a bit of total gamesmanship BS that you're like, yeah, we're not going to be on that,
I would go with the second one. I wouldn't say it's BS, but a little gamemanship to look at, hey, this guy likes to hold, this team likes to do this along the boards. I mean, we'll let the guys know. I'll say, hey, the coach are concerned about this team that in the end zone and the D zone, they like to wrap and hold. They don't let go quick enough. This guy, likes to do things. This defenseman likes to check up, on the guy. So I mean, it's just kind of getting it out there, and they'll bring up problem children from other teams that we already know. We know who the problem children are. So it's just the funny thing is this year and the last couple of years, is faceoffs are so big. It just seems like faceoffs are brought up every weekend. Like
here we go, Nick. Here we go.
This guy cheats. This guy cheats. This guy isn't. And it's just amazing how the coaches. I mean, how big faceoffs are for the coaches.
Yeah, I will bring up Nick before I let you jump in there. For those who are wondering, I believe it's episode number 96. Nick and I actually had a really long officiating discussion. Actually was our best episode in show history. So Mike, if you got a chance to go back a couple episodes, you might enjoy it. You'll probably be mad at me. You'll probably really like Nick, but anyway.
That's all right.
Well, you have to look at, so faceoffs, again, as I mentioned, right, Mike, is that the puck possession in hockey is so important for the coaches and for the teams, right? And no question, as you know, every single player in the dot, I'm a former center myself, you're looking for every millimeter or half of an inch of an advantage you can get, right? So when you're trying to keep that face-off as clean and even as possible, granted, there's going to be some stuff that's probably going to be let go, but with I guess how every team is trying to give themselves an advantage, especially in certain key situations in the game, right? I guess from your perspective, is the referees really, for lack of the better phrase, they're not dropping the puck because either one player or the other, they're just looking for as fair as a face-off as possible?
Absolutely. And you're trying to establish that right away at the start of the game, because it helps you in the third period when the team's got the goaltender pulled and then face-off really is big, because you don't want to start in the third period trying to get them lined up. So you're starting to start from the beginning of the game and get them going, and just all you want really we're looking for is that little pregnant pause when they put the stick down instead of timing it. We had a penalty a couple weeks ago, a game I was at, I can't remember what team it was. Was it St. Cloud? It might have been St. Cloud when they I think it was in fact I think it was where there's the face-off violation, and the guy told the referee, it goes, I was just trying to time it. Well, exactly, you try to time it, and that was the second face-off violation. But all you're trying to do is get so it is a fair face-off, because it is so huge, like you were saying, Nick, is just so huge right now with puck possession. These guys are so good at getting that puck. I mean, they'll get the puck before it even hits the ice out of the air. So we're just trying to slow it down and get the best possible face-off that they can. And they have to start working from the beginning of the game. So at the end, when the face-offs are really, really big, you don't have to battle through that.
Doesn't that face-off violation just sound like Kevin Fitzgerald, Nick? I don't know if it is or not.
He was actually given a 2-minute minor this weekend on a face-off violation, so that sounds like Fitzy. But I guess, Mike, I want to follow up on actually more of a philosophical question here for refereeing, and I had it phrased actually very well. I had one person say, if the referee should call the book, you would see probably some teams get penalized 7 or 8 times a game, and maybe another team get 1. Obviously, that's a little bit hyperbolic, but my theory has been refereeing a game is more like managing the game. It's not necessarily the rule book. I guess, do you have a theory on how the referees are actually managing the hockey game? Is it more of the rule book? Is it just trying to manage the game flows? I guess, what's your take on that?
Absolutely. If we were to call it by the rule book, we tried it one year when I was reffing. They wanted more penalties called. So WCHA tried it, and we were up to 32, 38 penalties a game. Well, you can imagine how long that was taking. And Surdy, the old Duluth coach, finally said, well, this is enough. And we went away from that. So that experiment didn't work. But you're right. Managing the game is the big thing. And what referees use a lot is, and you go to a lot of games and you see 1-minute penalties, right? And the 1-minute penalty is, it was a hook, but it was a hook in neutral ice. He maintained possession of the puck. It didn't go to the opposite team. So we're going to call that. Let that go. Now, if that happens in front of the net, and that's what we tell our officials is, we look at that slot area, end zone face off, out to the blue line. If they get in that area, kind of like the paint in basketball, you get in that area, and then we start getting the hooking, the slashings. Then we start looking at that as a penalty in a situation like that. But I look at last week's Omaha St. Cloud game. My son worked that, and I was talking to him on the way driving back after the game, and we talked about it, said how'd it go. Well, it was minimal penalties. I don't know how 5-6 penalties. We basically let them play, and both coaches like that. There's a lot of minute and a half penalties, but then if things start getting away as a manager of the game, things start getting away. You need to wrap that in, and that's what makes a good official versus a not so good official. When do you bring it in, or do you ever bring it in and just let it just go? Game management is big, and our better officials are better at managing that game than others.
So let's kind of talk about, the process of what it's like. You mentioned, obviously, your role a little bit in some of the reviews or non-reviews, so to speak. One of the probably more noticeable incidents for St. Cloud fans this year was probably going back to the series against the Minnesota Golden Gophers, in which Nick Perbick stepped around outside the net, was grabbed in the back of the jersey, no call. Gophers end up obviously scoring, capitalizing on that play. And there was a review by the NCHC related to that. What is that process like? Can you kind of walk St. Cloud fans through that play? And was it just a case of an official that just, happened to maybe miss something, or was the call the right one on the ice?
Well, you're opening up as we can see, as you can tell, the call was not the right one on the ice. I'll stand by that. I mean, you can tell by that. The only thing is on that situation is I've been there, I've done it. You're looking at the game, and all of a sudden you're going, wow, that's a slash. That's a really good slash. Why isn't my arm not up? I mean, you just kind of go, okay, and you let it play out. I think in a situation like that, I don't know, but I think in a situation like that, you kind of want the teams, to dictate the play. Hey, you're a big kid, you're a D1 player, skate through it. And then he probably sat there and said, okay, yes, that was something, let's skate through it. And all of a sudden the puck's in the back of the net. And that usually is what happens. And at that point in time, and again, it was just an unfortunate situation that happened. Our leagues never, came out in the media and then, admonished the official, but they did at that point in time. I think that was maybe the correct thing to do. I know a lot of our officials didn't like it, but when you make a mistake, you got to own up to it. But it's just a hard thing because, like I said, with officiating, sometimes you just go, why didn't I call that? And I think that's what happened with that individual at that point in time.
Mike, I want a quick follow-up on that because we spent actually a good chunk of time actually breaking down that play. And basically what we may have concluded was just the angle of where the referee was, just based on where Nick Perbix was kind of, essentially shadowing the Gopher player, maybe not necessarily see the tug. Was there ever, and I'm not sure if this is information you can disclose, but was there maybe a sense in the ref that maybe he just didn't see the tug and maybe thought that he just lost his balance? Was there any discussion, or are there discussions, maybe this is a better way to phrase it, on the specifics of a play and maybe why one was, I don't know if we say missed, because if you're not missing something, you don't see it, right?
Yeah, and I think that all that comes into play with this one here is I think that the tug was seen, but not the gravity of it, if that makes sense. Because I think he didn't see it as bad as the video shows it. Because when I first looked at it live, I'm going, ooh, okay, he goes down, but then you see the one angle and you're going, oh, it really was bad. I think that situation came into play there where he was thinking like, okay, hey, it wasn't as bad as I saw it, so hey, fight through it. But then when you see the video. And everybody in our league said, yeah, once you see the video, it was a pretty good tug.
That's kind of the way those things work, right, Nick? They always end up in the back of the net too, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And my second follow up to that, Mike, I guess because there's two officials on the ice, right? Yes. What is the role of the back ice official in a situation like that? I know that each official is watching something a little bit different, but could the back ice official have seen that and have raised the arm, or I guess was he in charge of looking at something else in that overtime?
No, officials can call any penalties on the ice, and in that situation, there was just and again, we're talking about 3-on-3 overtime, where at big sheet ice like St. Cloud, where probably the back official wasn't in the position there he would be in regular game because they move so flipping quick up the ice. So he was back a little bit further, didn't get a good angle at it. But no, if an official can see it, we try to tell the officials, the high guy, the guy that's out in the neutral zone, let the low guy have the hooks holds because he is there looking at it. But if all of a sudden you see something to the head, check from behind, something aggressive, make those calls. But if you see something really, really egregious, like if that official saw that tug pull, then yes, absolutely, you got to make that call.
So let's talk about the big one that has probably been on the minds of as of recent, and Max Beach, of course, will love this one to his core, I'm sure. We've had a lot of discussion, Mike, and you and I actually joked about it at Men's Rec a couple of weeks ago. About a minute 15 left in regulation, Duluth St. Cloud a couple weeks ago. And it was Tanner Latterud that's coming down the ice on a 2-on-1 empty net. Yami Kranola comes, lifts his stick, and then Latterud goes down. Huskies go back down, and what do you know? They score, of course, on that play. From your perspective and kind of walking through that, when did you first kind of get a chance to take a look at the play? What were your first impressions? And who really is right on this argument? Do St. Cloud State fans, have a little bit of argument that it was a good no call, or should Duluth fans be rightfully upset about this one?
Well, I was looking at it probably about a half hour after the game, because I got a phone call from the supervisor that was there, and says, "Hey, can you look at this? Can you just look at this on there?" So we get, DVD Sports comes up right away, and I was on it talking to him, looking at it. And right away when I saw it, I was going, wow, we missed another one, in that situation, going, here we go again. But then you look at it frame by frame, we can slow it down. And literally he hits his stick. I mean, to me, that way, it looks like he lifts his stick. It's at the time the Duluth player was either shooting or passing the puck, was maybe on the outside edge. I just think it was everything lined up where the stick hit the stick, the player went down. But when you look at it in fast motion, it looks like he's taken down. But I think, and I'll stick by it, and we brought up to the other guys that actually the correct call was made. And it's kind of funny you bring it up, Nick. We're so glad that guy didn't overreact to make that call, because it looked egregious. But I think it was the right call. And actually, I had Duluth and Denver the following weekend, and I talked to Sandlin about it in the locker room a little bit. We went back and forth, and because I thought, oh boy, here we go. But I mean, he didn't agree with it, but he didn't put up too much of a fight after we looked at the video. So I think the right call was made myself.
And you talk about, Mike, how important the positioning is of refereeing too. On that exact play, the referee virtually right in front of you. You talk about how he can see that stick positioning and whether he did get in the hands or whether he tucked in to the feet. I guess, how much teaching or how much importance is placed on officiating in terms of their positioning in the ice so that way they can see the right call, or in this position, make sure they're not making the wrong call.
Oh, we cover positioning all the time, because you're right, Nick. That is the biggest thing, is where you're at to be able to see the play. And we have some faster guys, more in shape guys than others. And we tell the guys that aren't as fast, like, if you're the high guy, you better start leaving the zone a lot earlier so you can see, because we want them to see that play coming at them when you're the high guy, and not turn around catching up with the play. Positioning in we tell our guys in the corners when the puck in the net, even though we have video, get to the net as much as you can. So positioning is a big thing. And you're right. When you look at the video, that referee is looking right at it. And, like he said, the same thing. I saw stick on stick. So positioning is huge.
So when you talk about the process of an official, and I think it is a unique perspective where, obviously you have the casual fan who's watching nothing but the puck, right? You have the hockey savvy minds who are watching all the players on the ice. I'm sure officials kind of have their own routine where they're watching, hands and, things like that, kind of a different, viewpoint from every aspect within the arena. But what is it like really to be an official? Like, what are the most exciting things about a job? How long did it honestly take you to tune out the noise and tune out the crowd noise of 5,000 people that really aren't your best friend at that particular moment? What is the process like on a game night of being an official?
Well, that's a good question. And as an official, you're kind of in the mindset of a player, because I know there's big games, there's not so big games. I remember when I used to officiate, I used to do the Gopher North Dakota game. And, I thought about it the Monday before. You start thinking about, okay, the crowd, what could happen. And you just start preparing as an official, just like a player, getting ready for that game. And then you get out there and like you said, you let the game unfold in front of you. And I know people that aren't been in that atmosphere, when you're at Ingolstadt Arena, Cole Center, Wisconsin, 14, 15,000 people, you don't hear them actually. You actually don't hear the crowd when you're out there and in the zone, so to speak. And that's what you try to do as an official, is try to get as prepared as mentally as you can. And that brings us into another point with amateur officials. That's what we basically are. I mean, we're not pro officials. It's tough sometimes for these guys to, get on a plane Friday morning, Thursday night, and your 3-year-old son just came down with a cold. Now you're leaving your spouse, with 2 other crying kids, and you're getting on a plane to go on a weekend to, Denver or something of that nature. And so you just have to be in the mindset for that and get into that. And the biggest thing is like we talked about before, knowing your positioning to help you out through the game, knowing the rule book, and, be in the right frame of mind for those games.
Mike, you brought up the Gophers North Dakota rivalry, old shades of WCHA. I'm curious if a name Derek Shepard rings a bell for you at all.
We had to bring up Derek, didn't we? Oh,
yes,
yeah.
we did.
See, Derek will say that everybody at Grand Forks loves him, but everybody at Grand Forks says we hate him, and vice versa at Minnesota too. So, but Derek was I hate to say my linesman, but he worked lines with me him and John Campion for years. We worked, I think 3 or 4 Frozen fours together when he was linesman, and then he moved up to reffing, and he's quite a character.
Are there, I guess for a character or a referee, I guess how you talk about the mental aspect of being a referee. I guess that's got to be pretty important, especially when you have 2 opposing coaches and allows players that are probably constantly in your ears, from even before the game till even after the game's finished. I guess how mentally tough is it to be an official?
Well, it is, and like I said, it starts from the minute you get into the rink, and you got to leave your home stuff alone. Again, we're not NHL, this isn't our livelihood, so you got to really leave your stuff that's happening at home and now get ready for that game. And the referee's got a lot of routines, just like players. You go get coffee before the game. You go lay your stuff out in the locker room. Skates this way. You do your pre-game routine the same way. So you try to stay in that same routine to be mentally out there and get in the game. And then the thing is when dealing with coaches and dealing with players, there's a fine line between confident and arrogancy. And any officials at all. I mean, like, I don't care what sport you're looking at. And the more confident ones that can be confident in their game and be able to, do that game without overthinking it will be the most successful. And the other thing is about officiating out there is communication. And we got some guys in our league that don't communicate as good as others. You got to be able to talk to the benches, talk to the players. And sometimes you have to put the hammer down, and use some salty language with them. But, that's how it is. And coaches appreciate that. Coaches will always tell me, hey, that referee, acknowledge stuff. And you guys might not even see it during the play because it'll happen during the play, during stoppages where they're communicating with officials on the ice. That's what they want. So basically, if you can get that under wraps, you're going to be okay in officiating.
Always appreciate, the officials that were straight shooters. I think, you kind of knew that, whatever their line was, you knew where they were, you knew where you stood with that too. And some officials too, obviously being able to say, that's my bad, I apologize too. There are times where that happens too, I think. But Mike, I kind of wanted to ask too, when dealing with players, when dealing with coaches, let's kind of flip the book. If you're a player or a coach, as an official, how do you have a discussion in a way that, like, you're going to kind of be able to meet and talk about it? Obviously, you're not coming up to somebody, screaming and yelling at the official. What as an official do you want to see from a player or a coach that allows them to kind of talk it through with you and, maybe kind of decide or figure out, where they stand that night?
Yeah, basically it's if a coach wants, we have coaches, a good example of this coach isn't around anymore. Mankato, Troy Judding, love the guy. Yeah. He's great, but he just all the time he's going. He'd send the captain over. In fact, there's one captain. He's from Warroad. I love the guy. I can't remember his name, but he came over one time, and I go, "What?" And he goes, "No, Schmitt." He goes, "Let's just talk." He goes, "He sent me over here. Let's just talk." So we just sat there for about 30 seconds, talked about everything. And he goes, "Is that long enough?" I go, "Yeah, that's long enough." So then he went back over and just to make Troy happy, but. So if a coach is always going, or a captain or a player always got the mouth going, that player probably not going to get, the benefit of the doubt or get it, but when that coach wants to talk about something, if it's not after just every 2-minute minor, but talks about something that did happen that's weird, okay, let's go over. He comes down to not standing up on top of the back of the bench, comes down to our level and talks in a manner that's not screaming or yelling. Hey, we'll talk not as long as they want to, but we'll talk to them. Same as a player. Some of the great captains I dealt with, they weren't in your face, turning around going, you effing miss that, you effing miss. They'd look at you and go, hey, that guy put that, stick in my back, and hey, you're right. And I'll look at it next time. And those guys got the benefit of the doubt at the end. So it basically comes back, like I said, communication again is just talk to us. Treat us like human beings. We're going to come over and talk to you in those situations on that. But the coaches that want to talk all the time, or the players that are yapping all the time, they're probably not going to get that benefit that other guys would.
Quick follow-up, Nick. I just want to kind of jump in there, as always, right? But when you have a coach that you kind of know they're kind of fired up before they even call an official over, right? It's something that they're feel is very aggrieved in some way. At what point do you kind of decide, like, yeah, we're just going to go over there and we're probably not going to be there that long? Like, how do you manage this situation when you know that a coach is kind of white hot? Are there ever situations where you don't even engage with the coaches a little bit? Kind of how does that work where the line where you're like, yep, you're not going to get the time of day?
Yeah, and we try and tell our guys in our league at the end of periods, if a coach is waiting at the bench, we tell them, nope, we'll talk to you at the start of the next period. And that usually gives the coach time to cool down. And sometimes they don't even come back out and want to talk because it's just a heat of the moment deal. But the thing in the situation is that if it is, like I said, a weird situation where, the guy got pulled down, like we were talking about, and that wasn't the end of the game, it was a goal. Yeah, you'd go over and talk to him. But if it's not going anywhere and the coach is just mother effing you and going down that road, it's not gonna gain anything to do that. But yeah, I mean, you're going to go over and talk to the benches to explain a weird situation but if the coach wants to talk all the time, we're probably not going to go over there and entertain that in those situations. Again, now if a coach, we might go over there and there might be another coach, like the assistant coach going off or there's something, then we'll go over and say, hey, I'm not going to talk to the assistant or your trainer. I'll talk to you, but not that guy.
Mike, I want to get your perspective on the general, procedure of reviews. I know that whether it's an offsides call or a shootout, continuation of the play kind of play, right? A lot of fans are looking at this, and I know in St. Cloud was 2 weeks ago. It was almost a 2.5 minute review in the shootout. I guess from your perspective, and not necessarily what the NCHC wants, but from an officiating perspective, because you've been doing this for so long. Are you a fan of the longer reviews? Does it really matter? Are you really even concerned about how time they're taking, or is it you're just trying to get the call right based on the video reviews and everything? Is that really all you're focused on? You're less concerned about how long it takes?
Well, we don't have enough time to go into reviews because you're talking to the guy that does not like reviews. And everybody knows in the league, I'm not a review guy. It's kind of funny because I did a BU in Michigan in Milwaukee in '97, the frozen face-off. That's the first time we ever used video review. It was only for if the puck crossed the line or not. That was it. And that was a big thing. Going, wow, we're using review for puck crossing the line. We actually got to use it one time in that game. No, I'm not a big review because I look at it as the official makes a call. It's a human in nature, right? And we make a split-second call. So should we be reviewing everything? No, I don't like it. I don't like the length of reviews. I don't know how long they take. They slow the game down. They're not good for fan interaction. They're not good for teams sometimes because, you lose the momentum. Now, with that said, I got to go back a little bit, a couple of things, because since we have it, a lot of the coaches were saying, well, why didn't we have it? Why aren't we using it? So we always hear that, right? So, so then, if we're spending all this money on technology, why aren't you looking at it? So the coaches are a lot that bring it up too. Sometimes the other thing is the video is not working. And that what takes such a long time. And what happened is that night of what you're talking about, that not overtime, but shootout goal, the above net camera was not operational in St. Cloud for some reason. So they did not have that view. So they're trying to look for that view, Where is that? Bring it up. It wasn't there. So, we're trying to look for the best angles. And then what happens is, like in a situation like at St. Cloud, is that you'll have your in-house cameras that are part of your view, but then you have your Fox, whatever it is, will be there. What we call production views. Well, production will then send views to us. So I might, say, hey, does production have anything? Yeah, it's coming. Now it takes longer to get that up. So I know it takes longer, but then what we do is what happened years ago is we went with nothing but our views that we had. And then about after the game, a production view came up and showed it clearly. So that's why we want to see every view. In production, do you have anything? It might take longer. And then it comes down to the last thing is that it takes longer, is that, like, let's take that shootout goal. It's our guys' asses on the line, right? So they want to make sure they get it right. So they look it over, and they want to make sure they get it right. But I wish we could just get in there, look at it, and boom, it's there. Let's move out. And I agree with you. But there's a lot of other things that happen with reviews that the fans don't understand. And technology is a lot to do with in a lot of these places.
Hashtag Max Veach on that one for sure, Nick. I got two more questions from Mike. And again, thank you so much for joining us. We seriously appreciate it. Talking about the state of the NCHC a little bit, because I think it doesn't really matter the fan base. I think there's always going to be those fans that feel like the NCHC officiating, I'm sure it was the same when the WCHA, is not up to snuff. They're always missing calls, that sort of thing. As an official and around the NCHC officiating crew, how much of that noise, do you actually notice, and how much of it, do you actually view as that constructive criticism to kind of fuel you to continue to try to get better at your job? How much do you listen, and how much, are you just focused on your process each time?
Well, I mean, I look back when I officiated, we didn't have Twitter, Instagram, social media. It was awesome. I mean, it was, I mean, they used to bring down after the game VHS tapes to us. Here's your VH to go review, and that's, I mean, I got a ton of them downstairs. It's just funny, but, and yeah, nowadays, again, I do the social media stuff, but I try not to look at any of the stuff that's negative. Get into it. I got some things today from the game this weekend, one of the games, and but again, our guys are pretty good on it. Our guys will, they will not look at the social media stuff. They won't go get into it. People try to message them. They try to get out of that. But nowadays, it's kind of it's there. So I mean, we hear things like, the officiating is not up to par. You guys got to use NHL guys. Use these guys. I mean, you look at the NHL social media, they're getting hammered every night on things. The biggest compliment I get from our league, and it doesn't get out there a lot, is when our coaches go to other conferences. And I'm not saying other conferences don't have good officiating. I'm not saying that at all. But when they come back and go, you know what? I really like our guys. I thought we didn't have some good guys, but man, after being out here this weekend, I really appreciate our guys a lot more. So I think we could do better a lot of times, but things like that happen, and we'll try to get better every weekend. That's what I'm trying to do as a supervisor.
Didn't you know, Mike, that reffing is just a Sunday stroll in the park? It's easy. Come on, man.
Well, it's funny because I was home this weekend. I wasn't working anywhere, and I went out Sunday to our rink in Minot just to go watch hockey, just to sit there and Squirt B game. And I was going, what's going on here? Long story short, the team from the coach was pulling his team off because the 16-year-old kid, he didn't like how he was officiating. So now I got to get involved in this kind of somehow. And I'm going, I'm going to send me to an NCHC weekend. It's easier. It's just, it's crazy.
Mike, my final question actually dives a little bit deeper into almost that exact topic, as kind of what we're seeing is a rising and kind of a negative trend in terms of the treatment of officials. I know there's some video being shown around social media about essentially a younger player that has essentially what it looked like he punched an official, right? And luckily, that player is, at least from what I can see, is either indefinitely banned or permanently banned. But I guess, are you noticing an uptick in this treatment of referees, and are you concerned at all for the state of refereeing in itself if we continue to see behavior like this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, officiating, not only in hockey, in every sport, it's down throughout the country. And we got lucky this year. We have a guy in my hometown, Thor Nelson, who's a retired NHL linesman, 1,000 games, 20 years in NHL. He's a referee in chief in North Dakota, and our numbers went down like by 20, 25%. And he literally went out and did emailing to these individuals now, and our officiating went up to try and get people in. And we try to bring, like I said, when I'm off, I'll try to be at the rink to help out to, get situations like this. But you're right. I don't know what we're going to do about it, but it's kind of funny because what situation would happen with this last night, whenever that happened, where that individual punched that official, then you start looking at remarks of individuals. Well, but the linesman got in his way. He was probably mad because the linesman was in his way, and there was linesmen, and people are kind of not making excuses for the kid, but kind of going, well, if the officiating was bad, I can see sometimes guys getting, their, emotions high and everything. And I understand that, but but it's, and the kid, like the situation I talked about when I went out to the rink the other day, the 16-year-old kid, I went and talked to him, and you could tell he was not shook, but he was, do I want to go back out there? Said, go back out there. We're going to be here. I'm going to be here. Some other guys are going to be there. But, the kid was shook, and luckily he's a goalie, so he's a little goofy, but, so he's, so he was able to go back out there and do it. But yes, it is a situation that's, I don't know what's going to happen, but, we've had situations around here, like I said, where parents have tried to come down to the referees' rooms with, 12-year-old kids doing a mic game, so I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, I actually know who that kid is now, and he's a very nice kid. So, good guy. But it's kind of funny, Mike. My final question for you before I get to it: my last ever competitive hockey game, national championship game, actually never ended. It got stopped with 39 seconds left because a kid opened the penalty box door and came out of the penalty box and knocked an official out. Talk about a very odd way to win a national championship, by the way. Tough celebration after that one.
Wow.
But kind of weird. I was on ESPN in my last hockey game, but for all the wrong reasons, technically. But my final question, speaking of national championships, Mike, you've been around, with some WCHA Final Fives, national championships, regionals. Is there one particular event, one particular game, one particular weekend that really stands out in your career as a highlight or something, that you're never going to forget? Or is it just a particular opponent or weekend series that came around every year?
No, I think, there's so many of them in the old WCHA. I just think every time you had a Minnesota, North Dakota game, Minnesota, Wisconsin game, excuse me, my first championship game was probably the biggest one. 98, I was at Boston, and it was Boston and Michigan at the Fleet. Well, it was called the Fleet Center back then, and then it was sold out 19,000 plus. And that was just, when you're out there, and actually one of the linesmen, John Elvey, when we're standing there waiting, in the referee's crease, waiting for the announcements, he leaned over, he said, "Hey boys, look around, soak it up, because we may not be here again." And that's, it kind of hits you on, and you kind of look around, and about the other one, the other game that really sticks out is I did the World Juniors up in Red Deer in 95. I ended up doing Finland and Canada on New Year's Day, which turned out to be the gold medal game because they used to do round robin then. Mm-hmm. And so they had to actually push the game back 45 minutes because people couldn't get in, because now that turned into be the gold medal game. And that was during the strike year. So Canada was loaded with all the pros, and to go out in Edmonton on the Gretzky ice, and to be out there and sold out with Canada, Finland was awesome too. So those are memories. But I tell you what, in the WCHA, all those big games, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Minnesota, those were all the fun games.
Certainly, it's fun to see that even from a referee's perspective, you enjoy the game, right? Mike Schmitt, again, NCHC official supervisor. Thank you again so much for joining us, and we'll definitely have to keep tabs on you and continue to have a great rest of the week. We'll definitely catch up with you later time.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
And Nick, that was a fun one. I definitely enjoy, Mike, pretty straightforward, pretty candid in a lot of things, obviously within his boundaries or realms that his occupation currently entails, of course. But, Nick, kind of final thoughts on having Mike, and maybe more, thoughts on the NCHC. Unfortunately for Mike, or not fortunately, whatever you want to call it, he's going to be very in tune to the Huskies' seasonal success, so to speak, in the upcoming week here.
Yeah. And, I do appreciate how, Mike does see it from both sides. I think, as a former player, you do have a little bit of that grasp of what it's like to be in the heat of the competition, as well as, understanding that your role is to help to manage the game, and you're trying to get the calls right. You also know there's a human element to it. So I think he's got the right balance, and, you can kind of see that through the NCHC. And I think you said it perfectly. They're not going to be perfect, but I think the NCHC does really strive to get the calls right as best they can. They educate each other. They allow the coaches, as he mentioned in our talks with him, to kind of give them some tips maybe, or some tricks of the trade, right? But overall, I think they've done as a league a very good job of keeping the game flow going, but also making sure that when things are rightfully needed to be called, they let the stuff that they think needs to go. So it's great to get the insight from a very tough and very I guess a position that receives a lot of more criticism than do praise. So fantastic insight from him.
Yeah, it's not very rare that you hear like good things about officiating per se. I mean, you hear it in spurts and moments, like, oh, that was a well officiated game or that sort of thing. But there's not really a whole lot of praise, I think, over the course of a season for an officiating crew or league's officials and that sort of thing. So I think it does kind of give another piece of insight. And I think the thing that kind of most stuck out to me too is NCHC officials and college hockey officials, in some senses are kind of weekend warriors in terms of this, and this is not necessarily a livelihood for a lot of these officials per se. So pretty interesting episode, I thought, and obviously going to have a lot of implications as we come up. This show coming out on Tuesday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. So implications related to Tuesday night's game against Duluth, as well as the Colorado College matchup coming up next weekend for the men's squad. Women's hockey back in action this weekend in the WCHA quarterfinals against Ohio State. Best of 3 series on that one. Interesting to see how that one ends up. And then men's hockey the following weekend is going to match up against Duluth at Amsoil Arena to close out the regular season before some NCHC playoff action. And of course, the Minnesota Wild. Boy, did they look good the other night with a nice victory over the Edmonton Oilers. Had some friends in attendance there that are Canadian, and it was money well spent. Not for them. With that being said, Nick, that will do it for episode number 100 of the Healthy Scratch interview segment. As always, check out episode number 101 coming out this Sunday.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Pervix!
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies alongside
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it. He scores! Kirill the Thrill is for real. Welcome to the NHL. A game winner.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.